Today, an episode of the Bokeh Podcast where Nathan and I talk a heck of a lot about hybrid coverage and how to add it to your business, as well as just other general business things and also wedding photography things. So please join us for the full video.
I want to introduce our guest for today. Taylor Jackson is here with me, my new friend. We were chatting a little bit before we get started. We're going to have a lot more conversation today. Thanks for hanging out with me, Taylor.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. I can't believe you do that intro live. Anytime that I ever try to do an intro, it's like there's 15 cuts in it, and yeah. Like, well done.
Well, you don't see the fumbling around behind the screen. Normally I have a screenshot to share too of the actual receipt from my donation. Of course, just for the sake of leadership and making an example, but I totally forgot to set that up today. So for those of you listening in, forgive me. I promise I did it. I can always post it later. But yeah, the live streaming thing has been kind of a fun challenge. You and I were talking about learning new skill sets before we got started on air. And just this live streaming experience in the last couple of months or so has been at times a little bit hilarious, certainly a little bit stressful, but I love the challenge of it. It's like, man, there's 60 different things going on here on the screen and lighting and a camera and audio. And it's kind of fun to learn to keep up with that in addition to having good conversation. So I'm taking the challenge on.
It's fun. Like, I feel like everything that you learn, you're essentially a tiny television broadcast studio. So obviously as a photographer, as a video creator, those skills, they're going to find a use somewhere also for client work or whatever. So it's cool to just keep learning new things and figuring it out and push yourself. Like, it's hard enough to do a podcast, and it's even harder to add the layer of actually doing the technical direction of the entire thing while hosting.
It's true.
Well. So
yeah, I've got multiple windows and screens going on here. It's kind of fun. And actually, to that end, one of the screens that I have pulled up, I want to remind everybody watching and listening in that we do, part of the purpose of doing these live streams right now, for the most part for us at the Bokeh Podcast, is just to have the video content to share after the fact. But in addition to that, of course, the major benefit, and I hope as this becomes, or as we develop this as a streaming platform, that we have more involvement from those of you who are listening in. Comment, ask questions. Taylor's got a lot of information to share. We're going to get into a variety of topics today. So don't hesitate to post those comments or questions there as you're streaming on YouTube or on Facebook. Just a brief introduction, and we're going to kind of build on this as we go, Taylor. But for those of you listening in or watching, if you want to follow, and you're going to want to follow Taylor on Instagram, it's Taylor Jackson. I've posted that up on the screen for those of you that are live streaming. And man, we were talking about, you have a variety of websites. I'll just go ahead and share all these really, really quickly. TaylorJacksonPhoto.com. That's your wedding photography website, which, by the way, we're going to come back to in a second because I have a question for you about that. Taylor Jackson Courses, which we'll also come back to in just a little bit. And then you've got 500,000 followers on YouTube, youtube.com/Taylor Jackson Photo. We'll link to all these in the show notes at bokehpodcast.com. I honestly, I don't even know where to start. I mean, like, there's so many different things that we could potentially talk about. Man, let's start with the first thing. And I actually mentioned Instagram earlier. And again, I'll pop this up on screen. Taylor Jackson. I'm a bit jealous, Taylor, and envious of your ability to not just simply think outside the box, but actually translate that to content creation. And we were talking about this beforehand. And content creation for me is very structured. I do it very intentionally. And what that kind of limits, I think, in some cases, is wit and kind of outside the box thinking and even communication style. Does that come naturally for you?
I think it's a learned skill. I think creativity is also a bit of a learned skill that if you keep doing stuff, you just kind of get better at it and you see more opportunities. I think what I've been doing recently, at least, is kind of taking inspiration from different aspects of things that I enjoy as far as content online that's outside of the photography and video space, and figuring out ways to kind of port elements of that into what I do for kind of in the photography space, or maybe for my wedding photography business, or for new experiments on like TikTok and whatnot. I think it's fun. Like, I feel like you kind of have a little bit of a blank slate when you're an entrepreneur, and you can kind of make it whatever you want. And I feel like that's kind of what my social presence has become. Fortunately, it's not far enough kind of in left field that I don't book any more weddings, that people still do see me as a wedding photographer / video creator. But I definitely am probably on that line of people being like, does Taylor even shoot weddings anymore? And I shoot I think in 2019, at least, I think I did like 67 weddings. So I shoot a lot of weddings.
Yeah.
But it's kind of, I don't know, like, I love that blank slate of being an entrepreneur, that you're kind of creating the business that you want to book work for next year. So whatever you're putting out there, you're probably going to be attracting ideal clients in the case of commercial photography or couples or whatever. So I kind of put out what I enjoy, and a lot of the time that comes back to me. Sometimes you fail, sometimes things are really successful that you wouldn't have expected, but yeah, it's fun.
Well, it's an incredible variety. And so that's really a great segue to my next question. And as I ask you this question, I'm going to pull this up. For those of you who are live streaming, I've pulled, or you'll see, of course, here on screen. For those of you that are listening to the audio version after the fact, youtube.com/Taylor Jackson Photo. So I'm here on the homepage of your YouTube channel, which again, over 500,000 followers and such a wide variety of wonderfully produced content. Again, more questions to come on that in a bit. But you mentioned to me before we started today that you've got a number of projects coming up. And are those all associated with YouTube, or are there some others as well that you want to share?
I would say it's kind of all over the place. Most of it is, I would say, it's all in a content space. So a lot of it is kind of, we'll find a home eventually on YouTube. Earlier today, we actually put up a tutorial that's 2.5 hours long. It's like the biggest wedding photography tutorial that I've done. Fortunately, I was able to actually render that out of Premiere, which was a bit of a struggle for the past 3 days. So it's up there now. And I know everyone that works in Premiere or Final Cut, they know the pain.
How big a file is that final render?
It's like 27 gigs.
Wow.
Pretty big. But yeah, the problem is not the upload. The problem is actually putting it together on my computer, and it just wasn't having it. So it was a few days late, but it's up there now. And I would say that was kind of something that I was thinking about building even back in October. We shot a lot of it last October, and I was like, do I really want to drop this like super helpful tutorial in the middle of the winter, at least in North America, when people aren't likely going to be shooting their first weddings for a little. So we put it up today, and I suspect that a number of people are probably looking at their first weddings ever that they're shooting maybe in a couple weeks from now, or at some point this summer. So I figured that it was time to release it, and I'm super happy with it, and it's cool to finally have such a big project out there.
Well, and I'm trying to pull this up here on the live stream on YouTube, but we've got, it says free 2.5 hour wedding photography tutorial behind the scenes at 10 full wedding days. I mean, I'm subscribed to your channel. I was actually spending some time in it this morning, and first of all, the production value is just incredible. So major props to you for that. But then the way that you've approached, especially the behind the scenes thing, I don't think I've ever seen this before. So this is actually my next question. I'm curious. And I want to encourage our listeners to go to your YouTube channel and check out these behind the scenes and wedding day coverage that you share, because you somehow, and I still don't know how you do it, I'm curious if you don't mind sharing, how in the world do you attach what looks like a GoPro to your camera for the full wedding day and it not get in the way of you actually shooting?
Yeah, so it's mounted to like kind of a flash bracket. It used to be all just GoPro adapters, and that was a little clunky. It worked, but it wasn't ideal. Now it's just a flash bracket. So I actually have, like when I shoot video, I love having a handle on my camera. And now when I'm at wedding days, I also have a handle on my camera, just it feels more comfortable to hold it that way. Not when you're actually taking photos, but kind of the in between. So I am totally fine with having that. And it's kind of a back mounted it used to be looking over the settings of my digital SLR. So the idea was that you could just see literally all of my settings all wedding day. Okay. Now that I'm on mirrorless, it's a little different, just simply because the refresh time on the OLED display isn't quite as good as the old one when it comes to capturing on video. But I do my best to put all the settings up there eventually, but yeah, it's just mounted behind there, and it's something that I don't know if it was inspired or just completely stolen from the movie War Photographer.
Really?
From James Notchway, like when was that, like 2001?
Okay.
That was a great film. He had to mount, I'm assuming, like a full, very large camera to his camera. Mm-hmm. Now with GoPros, the tech is so good and it's so small that it's not a problem at all. I don't know what he brought, but he literally went to like actual conflict areas and conflict zones with his camera, with the video camera behind it like that. So I thought that was a cool angle, and I thought that it was an interesting way to show behind the scenes. My struggle when I was getting into weddings was that I emailed every single photographer in town, and none of them would let me second shoot for them. Well, they didn't say no. They just didn't ever get back to me. Okay. A few did. A few good people in the area did, and they were like, "Hey, I'll sell you a flash." And I was like, "Okay, yeah, okay, I'll buy that." And then eventually 2 or 3 years down the road, it turned into actually maybe second shooting, but it was very much in the beginning. I wasn't able to just go and get that hands-on experience. No one would have me out. So I figured that whenever I got to a point that I was shooting a lot of weddings, that I could bring that quote unquote second shooting experience to YouTube pretty easily, right? As well as fill more in with voiceover and actual notes on the screen rather than just living it on the day, which is, I wouldn't say more valuable, but equally valuable in kind of a different way. So that's kind of where that all came from. And yeah, it's fun. We got like, I'm going to say like 35 different full wedding days up now. And
yeah, well, and
hopefully more this summer.
And as you're talking, actually, I'm pulling up the one you shared one with me this morning, because I want to just very briefly show a screen grab of the actual perspective that you're shooting from. So I'm going to do this really quick, and I'll share my screen here, the browser window. So this is super cool because here you can actually see not just what you're seeing, but you can also see the settings on the camera, the top of the camera somehow. And still, I don't know how exactly you've got that thing mounted. It doesn't like totally get on your nerves all day long, but it's cool that not only can you see what you're doing, you can see the settings that you're shooting with, and then of course the result that you're sharing after that. I just think it's really, really well done. And honestly, it's kind of a refreshing break from what I've seen and some of the other behind the scenes video work from other photographers, which seems kind of overly produced, and a lot of it centers around, you know, a third party who's filming the photographer working versus actually seeing that first person perspective that you share in yours. I think it's super valuable and actually unique. So I'm super impressed by that.
Yeah, it was mostly like it is a real wedding day. So I don't, if I'm bringing somebody else that's running video, I want them running video on the actual wedding day. So this is very much like this is not the primary focus of what I'm doing today. I'm here to actually photograph and document the wedding as best I can. And with a GoPro, you can just kind of click on and just let it run. And it's way easier. You don't have to think about it. You're not like queuing up shots or calling action or anything crazy. And it's, it's easy. And now it's just kind of part of my workflow for wedding days.
Well, again, major kudos to you. We're going to link to your YouTube channel in the show notes, bokehpodcast.com. For those of you listening in today, if you don't do anything else, I mean, I would hope that that you would actually listen and take away. We're gonna. In fact, we even have a topic. There's so many different things we're talking about. We have a primary topic. We're gonna actually talk about hybrid shooting. We just recently did another episode along a similar vein, but this is more kind of practical implementation. What it actually looks like to include video along with photo in your business. We're gonna even get to that here in just a little bit. Andre says, "How is it mounted?" There's a comment in here coming from YouTube. How's it mounted? Couldn't figure it out. Maybe you said that. Can you share just a little bit more detail?
Yeah, if you type into YouTube, probably Taylor Jackson behind the scenes setup, I did a video on it, and the only difference between that video is in that video I'm using a GoPro Session, which is a little black box recorder, which I love.
Yeah.
But then they just never updated it and they killed it. I think GoPro Session 5 is like the last one they did.
Okay.
Whereas the 9 is just so good now, and also the 9 with the max lens, whenever you rotate your camera vertical or horizontal, it'll maintain a regular landscape video image, which is like makes my post-production so much easier.
Magic. Yeah.
So I run that. It's big and annoying. But my couples kind of know that I do this now.
Okay.
Whereas in the beginning, I wasn't being like sneaky about it, but I definitely didn't want them to be reminded that I'm recording some sort of video here, that I want them to be themselves. And if that's interrupting the actual wedding day experience and making them a little more uncomfortable, it's not something that I want to be doing. So at that point, I kind of kept it as small as possible. But now, unless it's somebody that's actually in the photography or video or television industry, no one even asks me like what this GoPro is doing anymore, that they know I'm there to shoot photo and video. And
really,
it's just it's just there. So yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting progression over the past maybe 2 years. Everyone used to ask about it. Now no one does.
Huh. Okay. Well, again, everybody listening and watching, you got to go check it out. The perspective is wonderful, and you're going to learn a ton from those videos. And we'll link to Taylor's YouTube channel in the show notes. And Andres, thanks for the question. And again, for those of you listening in, or more specifically watching actually the live stream currently, please don't hesitate. Ask questions, just like Andres did on YouTube, on Facebook. Ask questions as we go along here. There's going to be a lot of value to be had from Taylor's perspective and experience. On that note, Taylor, we're going to actually get into the questions that I would normally ask here at the beginning of a podcast episode. And I'm going to do it, I guess, kind of in conjunction with one more question that I had about your website. I'm going to pull up your website here at Taylor Jackson Photo, and I'm going to actually type this in as we go to it, taylorjacksonphoto.com. We got a kind of an intro video here, and then I'm going to click on the website link. And this takes me to your website. Now, I want to get into brand position here in just a second, but your take on a website is quite intriguing to me. I don't know that I've really seen any other photography website, at least as of late, that looks like this. Just a few images centered on the page, very, very little text, and then some links to, I guess, additional recent galleries or blog posts. I'm curious about your take on this. Like, what was the thought process behind that particular design, and how does that translate to the way that you're able to connect with clients?
I figure that one of the things that I don't know if it sets me apart necessarily, but I feel like it is definitely one of the things that helps me sell my services is the fact that I am out there all around the world creating lots of different work. And I feel like you get a lot of social proof and credibility from that. So rather than just having an updated blog that people can look through, I really wanted to push people pretty quickly to head over to Instagram so that they're able to actually kind of experience more of not only wedding work, but also other work that I do as well. And I found that to be I guess it's very difficult to quantify or to split test something like that. But I would say that overall, it's made my ideal client a lot more attracted to me, and probably my ideal couple or my non-ideal couple even more not attracted to me, which is totally fine. That if we would have found out after a half-hour phone call or in-person meeting that we weren't the right people for each other, I would rather them just know that right away.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's, at least as far as emails go, that everyone that inquires now seems to be an incredibly qualified lead.
Okay.
And they have probably already done some research. They've probably been to my YouTube page. They've probably watched some actual behind the scenes videos, which I feel like is a huge litmus test that if somebody's not into that or that style of coverage or that's not what they want, they know that now and they're not going to inquire. But I have a lot of couples that are just like, yeah, you're like the only one we're contacting right now. Are you available? And I would say inquiry physical numbers have gone down, but overall bookings have probably gone up since then, since I kind of switched over. And
really,
I did it out of necessity because I kind of broke my old website. It was a WordPress backend and it's not so functional anymore. And then that's why also SEO wise that I create like the largest faux pas there, where you go to my website and you actually go to a completely different domain, rather than the domain that's been up for 10 plus years that has a lot of like Google knows that domain, and then I just ruined all of that SEO credibility. It's okay. It's okay. People know me. It's one of the benefits of I've been doing this for like 15 years now. So one of the benefits is that my name is at least pretty well known around the area. And I've probably photographed the sister of somebody's wedding, or I've photographed probably a number of people in the local area. So it's okay.
Well, what's interesting, I mean, first of all, it caught my attention because it is such an unusual design. But at the very top of the website, and we'll come back to the website, for those of you who are listening in, we've got the visual pulled up here. At the very top of the site, the page, the best wedding photography is candid. And I want to say I saw this phrase somewhere else as well. Would you kind of say that is a position statement of sorts, or what is it that sets your brand apart specifically from the photographers in your marketplace? Yeah,
it's so I feel like it's, at least with the saturation of the industry, that you don't necessarily have to have something that's completely unique to sell from. Like I don't know, maybe I might be wrong here. Maybe correct me.
No, I love this. I love it. Go.
But I kind of feel like if the prerequisite to obviously booking any work is to be an incredible photographer, that the bar is so high now, that's just kind of a prerequisite. If you're a good photographer, unfortunately, that's probably not going to book you a whole lot of work on its own.
Agreed.
If you kind of layer into that your personality, and people can actually learn a lot about you in a way that they enjoy when they're on. So I kind of use my travel show. We do a show with Nikon that I'll actually have in the signature of all of my emails for first inquiries. So people are like, what? This guy does a travel show with Nikon? Interesting. Okay. And they'll click through to it, and then they'll see like 10 episodes. And by that point, they've spent a lot of time with me. If they even watch one of those episodes, I would consider that a pretty big win.
By the way, I love how you just very nonchalantly just kind of slide in there that you're doing a show with Nikon.
No big deal. And then all the last couple of, I don't know how long it's been now, but
I was actually showing my daughter one of the videos that you did within the last, I think, few weeks or so about Nikon, and it was actually kind of a long-term review of the Z6 II. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And some of the, I mean, not only was the experience itself, which you captured quite well in the video, beautiful, but some of the stills that you captured from that area were just stunning. Where was that specifically?
It would have been a couple of weeks ago. We're kind of re-releasing. So we released all of the episodes kind of into the beginning of the new world situation. And I was like, they were kind of, some of them were heavy because they're all individually about a topic that's something that's creatives usually struggle with. It's not just like fun, lighthearted, like, hey, let's go to Disney. It's stuff about burnout and real things that we struggle with. Yeah. And for us to release that into the most stressful situation that any of us have really kind of, or at least most of us have probably dealt with in our lives, it didn't really go as well as I think that we originally intended. So I'm doing re-releases now, and we're actually have like a little bit of a TV set, and we talk a little bit about the episodes and the behind the scenes, and then we'll actually go into it. So it probably would either have been Japan, Havana, or
this was a super cold,
Santorini.
like lots and lots and lots of snow.
Might have been in Iceland, or it might have been Banff, Canada too.
Oh yeah, and I've had some time in Banff. Yeah, I'm scrolling down here on your YouTube channel, and it's from a month ago, the Nikon Z6 II long-term review. We'll make sure to link to that in the show notes for those of you who are listening in or watching or otherwise. We'll make sure to put that all in there. But it's beautiful stuff. Anyway, I totally interrupted your flow. I just thought it was great how you just kind of nonchalantly, you're like, oh yeah, I happened to shoot for Nikon. But I also, in all seriousness, I truly respect your humility as well. You're not one that comes off like you're trying to go around touting this kind of stuff. So props to you.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
It's honestly just kind of like it's weird. It's very fortunate, but it's kind of just our life and the things that we get to do. And it's cool because it was definitely a calculated move that maybe this is getting ahead of ourselves. But like when I was first getting into wedding photography, like 15 years ago, I was very conscious of what I wanted my quote unquote dream life to kind of look like. And I knew the bits and pieces that I needed to put in place. I knew that weddings, they could be destination weddings. I knew that weddings, even if I was had a local booking here, that I could probably, maybe this will tie into your company.
Sure.
But basically I knew that I could shoot the wedding on the Saturday and then I could have everything outsourced and everything can go, and I can manage my inquiries from anywhere in the world. So for a long time, we would just travel and we would create the content that we wanted to eventually get paid for. I feel like this is the same with wedding photography, that if you're sitting at a portfolio of 0 right now and you don't have anything, don't wait for it to organically come to you. Because if you do, you're going to end up with the weirdest portfolio that you're just not going to enjoy building that work.
Yeah,
Whereas
true.
if you spend some money and you set up the shoots and you go out and you shoot your dream quote unquote wedding, even if it's a styled shoot, or you get kind of your best friends that you have an amazing connection with and that you just love to go out and shoot basically with people that are similar to them every single weekend. If you start building that portfolio, you start to get this momentum and you'll start actually booking that work. So that's similar what I did in the wedding space for sure, but then it's also very similar to what we did in the travel space as well, that in I think 2014, 2015, I basically started doing this show called A Photographer In that was kind of a vlog, I guess.
Okay.
And if I was in London, UK for a shoot and I had a day or 2 days off in Iceland, I would go to Iceland, I would film an episode there. And I'd be like, this is a test
Wow.
that if anyone ever like needs a one sheet of what I want to do, what my dream project is, like we're already kind of doing it. It's like 25% to what we wanted it to be. And then eventually we got connected with Nikon, and when the Z6, the original, was being released, we were kind of like, hey, love to do something around this. And the idea was like, we already have proof of concept that we've gone out, we've done this stuff, that we've
Wow.
been on safari in Kenya, and
Yep.
that we actually promoted Nikon before even they were involved.
That
So, yeah, it
safari
was
in
just all about
Kenya,
building that.
wasn't there a photo of a giraffe reaching inside whatever the enclosure was, like at the table, the dinner table or something like that? It's a wild picture.
Yeah, it's Giraffe Manor. It's like, it's a wild place. They do the giraffe breakfast where
Okay.
like you stay in the giraffe sanctuary, I guess. I don't know
Okay.
officially what it's called, but
Yeah.
there's just a bunch of giraffes on the property, and you do the breakfast and you do the tourist photo. They've come under some fire. I won't go too far into it, but recently,
Sure.
since we've been there, they've definitely had some issues.
Okay.
So maybe if you are considering going there, maybe do some research and make sure it's the right decision for you first. But
Sure.
it is a once in a lifetime experience for sure. Just to like have breakfast and there's just giraffes poking through, or depending if you're in one of the upstairs rooms, like Selma will just like poke her head in through the windows and wake you up, and you'll be like, oh yeah, I forgot where I was. That's a giraffe. Full size giraffe.
Is that a
outside my
nightmare, a
window.
dream? Like you can't, that would, wow, what an
Yeah.
experience. Okay. There's so many different
pretty
directions,
fun.
honestly, that we could go here, but I also want to respect your time. So let me actually try to make these these next couple of questions, rapid fire questions. So talk to me just very briefly about customer experience. And I'm particularly curious to get your take on this, just knowing that you think a little bit differently than the average individual. Is there something, a principle or an idea that you've implemented in your business that's enabled you to give a really great customer experience?
I think at my core, it's really all about efficiency when it comes to kind of all aspects of everything. Not to say like the photography process is rushed by any means, but I definitely am I definitely have efficiency in mind for kind of each individual piece of the day, as well as emails leading up to it, which is also nice because when you're efficient with your emails, you kind of train your couples to also be equally as efficient so they don't clog up your inbox as much, which is kind of nice. So shout out to my couples for that. And yeah, like wedding day, I would say even when we're doing photo and video coverage, if I have like 15 minutes total with them, that's kind of all that I need. I would say it's like the same wedding party, 10 minutes maybe. Family photos, if we have a list that we can run from, maybe that's a 12-minute process. So like within, even if we have a cocktail hour to do all the photos, they get back to their cocktail hour. And that's something that they seem to absolutely love. And it's something that I also talk about in the first meeting that seems to kind of at least get some positive responses usually, that like, oh yeah, like we do actually want to be part of our wedding day. That would be great. We don't want to drive 45 minutes to a park to do photos and 45 minutes out. And I think a lot of my couples also, again, like just attracting, or like attracts like, that a lot of the venues that I work at, I'm a preferred vendor, fortunately, at a number of venues around here, and they're all kind of in-house solutions. So they will do the ceremony on site and the reception, and they have a very quick, as far as like flow goes for the day, that everything just kind of happens. And I feel like my couples, when they find a venue like that and they connect with the fact that everything just happens here, all of a sudden they're kind of already in that efficiency mindset. And when they meet me and I'm just like adding to that even more, it's usually a pretty quick thing. So I would say that's kind of my focus overall, as far as kind of what customer experience is, kind of all across the board, I would say. Obviously, again, prerequisite, create great work, but if you can do it in a fast way, people tend to be pretty happy about that.
We've already touched on like 16 different topics we could do secondary episodes on. I'm sure there might be an opportunity to come back and do that at some point. I mean, you mentioned the reality, which is that a pretty picture doesn't make a business anymore. And that is so true. So then of course it naturally begs the question, what are we doing for the sake of the experience? And I don't know that I've, at least not as succinctly as you just did, had a photographer on yet in about 500 episodes that has specifically said efficiency. Because I think a lot of times somebody who's trying to create a great customer experience, the natural inclination wouldn't be to jump to how quickly can I get something done, right? When we're talking about, because a lot of photographers, and I say that in the context of a lot of photographers these days, when I ask them about customer experience, the emphasis is on the idea of relationship. And I think maybe the assumption is that efficiency means lack of relationship. But and maybe you can comment on that, but I'm also thinking, to your point, if I create a really efficient experience for the client, which enables them to focus on themselves and not me, the photographer, trying to create some construct of imagery or experience, but letting them actually focus on their day, what a brilliant experience that they would have. I mean, in my mind, that's my perspective, but what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are that a few venues around town here that I'll shoot at quite often, a lot of the couples don't even care to have any sort of relationship with me. That they email me, they know I do good work, they know that they trust me, and they like me enough to hang out with me for the afternoon.
Okay.
And based on that, they're pretty happy to go forward with me. There's obviously couples that maybe I spend more time with, or maybe we do like a destination engagement session or something with, that are a little bit more involved, and there is actually more of a relationship there. But that was something that was interesting for me to learn, was that there are obviously exceptions, but as I got into more higher end weddings, I found that people, like, they're busy enough. They're living their own lives. They don't need another relationship to manage. So they were just kind of happy to be like, yep, here's the contract, here's the payment. Like, see you like 3, 6, 8 months from now. Yeah. And that's great. And a lot of those couples don't want engagement sessions. They think they're weird. And I'm just happy to show up on the wedding day and be like, hi, nice to meet you. Like, for the first time ever. Maybe we met on FaceTime or whatever. But yeah. And then to maybe add to that, and to add to a bit of the last question, my couples, I would say 150% prefer phone calls now, even before in-person meetings were strange and canceled. Right. I would say that most of my couples, not even FaceTime calls, not even Skype, they just wanted to have a simple phone call. 2 of them in the room, me on the other end, that if they're working downtown Toronto, they're busy. They don't want to drive anywhere to a coffee shop to meet another guy, if they can make that process take a half hour rather than their entire evening.
Efficiency.
Yeah. And again, maybe that's just kind of who I'm naturally attracting.
Sure.
But that goes layers deep into the venue that they choose and all of that as well. So, yeah, I think there's other things to kind of think about. At least that's my experience on things. Maybe I distilled it a little too harsh.
But this is exactly what I was looking for, though, because again, you tend to think a little bit differently. I've seen this, and I have a lot of respect for that. And whereas we've had all this focus on the topic of relationships and countless episodes here at the show, there's always a different side to look at. And you're right, like this kind of ironically a bit egotistical perspective, which is that they need a relationship with me versus let me just figure out how to provide the best possible experience for them, which may happen to involve them interacting with me as little as possible. I think it's a great kind of counter to the conversation at hand these days. So I love the perspective. Let me keep going though. So there's an introductory video on one of your websites, one of your many websites somewhere, but in the website or in the video rather, you say that you work 6 days a week and even on my day off, of course, kind of tongue in cheek, but I'm sure that's probably even true at times. I'm curious with that kind of approach to business. I know that you love what you do, and naturally we want to spend time doing what we love, but is there, when it comes to time management, making sure you don't burn out, making sure you have time for your wife, where does the time management piece come in, and how do you balance things out for yourself?
Yeah, I think so. That statement in general, I would say, well, I guess it's kind of fortunate, again, going back to what I was speaking about earlier, that everything that I kind of do for fun, like travel, is technically work now. And I don't think that I could consider that work. Like if my wife Lindsay comes with me and we're in Iceland for a week filming content, like that's quote unquote work, but
sure,
I don't know, it's what I would want to be doing anyways. And that's what I would do with my time off. Mm-hmm. To speak kind of more from the hat of a wedding photographer, business owner, well, my business is working 6 or 7 days a week. That doesn't necessarily mean that I am. That means that I'm outsourcing, that I'm putting the wheels in motion to be very efficient and to get everything done. But I don't have to be there 6 days a week in order to do that. I'm not going to fly over to you guys and edit with you if you're editing my wedding. It's just, I don't know, like, but again, if I shoot 3 weddings in a weekend and you guys are working Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday on them, like I'm working, that's 6 days now, right? So I don't know. That's kind of where I came at that from. I feel like it also just sounded nice for clients to hear that too. Be like, oh, he works all the time. Great. I don't care about his work-life balance. Just want my photos.
And also a little shout out to Photographers Edit too. And I appreciate that. But in all seriousness, the notion that we can create a life for ourselves, which can combine work and play, or where even work feels like play. In my mind, that's kind of the ideal scenario as an entrepreneur. And frankly, a large part of why I'm even an entrepreneur to begin with, right? I'm not working for a corporation somewhere because I want the freedom, the flexibility that can come, and can, of course, being the operative word, that can come from not only creating my own business, but creating an efficiently run and scalable business. And in an even more ideal scenario that you describe, of course, being able to actually work and play simultaneously, I think it's really, really brilliant. So again, for those of you listening in or watching, make sure that you check out Taylor's YouTube channel because you get a taste of what exactly it is that he's talking about. We did you alluded to outsourcing editing, but I'm curious if there are any other elements of your business that you've experimented with delegating or editing outside of your immediate business.
Yeah, so I would say kind of the core piece of my business is actually, unfortunately, answering emails. I would say that is something that I could hire a studio manager to do, but I feel like it is important for me to keep that in-house internally and in my brain, I guess. So I feel like that's something that even though I could find someone to do, that I will always keep as my own piece. It's also, as an entrepreneur, there's all different variables to kind of experiment and to change around as well that I find some personal joy from. Yeah. But everything else, I feel like within a business, obviously with the exception of you showing up for the day, can kind of go to somebody else. That editing can go to you. And as far as like my video editing, I have a girl that lives locally here that's been doing it. And it's just like, it's very easy to set everything up, pay some people and buy your life back essentially, which is kind of the key piece that I learned, that if I have the time to market and I have the time to maybe book 1 or 2 more additional weddings, that can cover the majority of a lot of my outsourcing for that month or even that year in some cases. So I would rather shoot a few more fun wedding days, because that's the fun part, to generate the income required to actually hire somebody to do the other stuff that I do enjoy doing, but when you're, I don't know, like if I'm shooting 60 plus weddings in a year, like to do the post-production for that is just like I think you die. I think that you wouldn't even be living anymore. I don't think that there's another outcome that I would see. That it would just be like, that's it. Yeah.
Agreed. I mean, I still think back to before I even started Photographer's Edit, and I was doing my own edit because I was shooting weddings. I shot for over 10 years and as many as 30 or 40 a year. And I started on film, and of course it was easy enough to drop the film off at the lab and have that work processed. But then I'm shooting my own digital files and having to process those. And I'm a bit of a perfectionist, to say the least. And man, it was super, super stressful. So honestly, it was part of the reason I started the company, was just so I didn't have to continue to manage that. It's super, super painful at times, for sure. But you mentioned one thing, and I won't stay here long because we have so much else to talk about too. But the idea, I think one of the biggest apprehensions photographers have is cost, right? So here's $100 or $200 out of my pocket to hand this editing over to somebody else. And that's kind of where the conversation or the thought process stops. What you highlight is the fact that because you spend a little bit of money, you have opportunity to actually make quite a bit more. In addition, of course, to the flexibility and time that comes with that. That's such an important concept.
Yeah, it's I would say that was like kind of one of the core pieces that I had in my business, really, maybe not from day one, but I'm trying to think when, I don't know if I 100% recommend the book, but 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss came out, and there were some interesting concepts that I hadn't really heard of. This would have been like 2007, 2008, maybe.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, cool. Like people can outsource. Like you can have this digital assistant somewhere that doesn't live anywhere close to you, manage your life. Awesome. That I didn't really ingest. I feel like it's important to figure out what you can kind of make work for you and pull bits and pieces from all different people. But the concepts in there were essentially like lifestyle design, that like figure out what you want your life to look like, put those pieces in place, and know that there are times that you need to buy your life back. That if you can spend maybe $500 to make all of your post-production go away for that week or that month, or depending on how much volume you're shooting, all of a sudden you have that time that you can put into maybe say creating a travel show or creating the content that you want to exist, that eventually you'll be able to book work from, that will be in a similar vein. So I think that's kind of what I took from that book overall, and knowing that it is in fact possible. I also did actually outsource my own, I was working a 9-to-5 desk job a couple of days a week. And this was in like around that time. And I actually outsourced my entire job. So I went into work and I sat there and I worked on my photography business, and I was paying somebody about $10 an hour less than what I was getting paid to be there. So that was like fun, not long-term, but yeah.
No, but holy cow, man. Okay. So first of all, Tim, I think actually Tim Ferriss in that book, cause it's one that I read years ago as well. One of the things he talked about was doing essentially that. Is that where you kind of got the idea, or how did you even make that work?
Yeah. I had some friends that were in college, and basically it started that, I was working for quite a high-end projector company, and stuff obviously that was like industry secrets I had to keep on my desk, but they assigned me like such stupid tasks, like, okay, like we know you're really good at doing, like I was kind of doing graphic design, video production, and photography for them. And then every now and then they'd be like, oh, by the way, we need these like 3,000 images uploaded and keyworded to Flickr. And I'd be like, well, I don't want to do that, but I can estimate how long that's going to take me and kind of block that off and take like 2 or 3 days to do that. And then I would just find somebody that could just do it for less money, or that was maybe just wanted to actually enjoy the process of uploading and keywording to Flickr, which I don't think those people exist, but that's kind of where it started. And then I just kept pushing the boundaries. Like every week I'd get a new job. I'd be like, okay, I need to make 150 digital picture frames for this trade show in Vegas. It's like, okay, somebody can do that. And this was before Fiverr too. With Fiverr, that would have been like I could have outsourced everything on Fiverr.
You could have had like 3 jobs and outsourced them all.
Like, wow, Taylor's so productive. Meanwhile, just like working on my photography business, editing my websites.
That's hilarious. Wow.
But yeah, it was interesting. And that was not necessarily to like stick it to the man. That was more of a creative problem solving challenge, I think, for me, that I always kind of felt like an entrepreneur. And when I was working for somebody else and I was kind of stuck at that desk job, it was very hard for me to find any enjoyment from it. And stuff like that, still to this day, I find like this weird sense of enjoyment from being able to do that. So yeah.
Well, I mean, it goes back to the efficiency concept. And actually, Tim Ferriss has since come out, he wrote the book. Of course, the title is what we would call clickbait today, right? But he's specifically spoken to that. He's like, I didn't think that, I wasn't actually telling people that they should only have a 4-hour work week. The concept, the principle driving that whole book was work intelligently. And that's incredible. You did just that. Wow. We could spend some time there too. That'd be super fun. It's really a great segue though to my last question before we kind of get into this topic of hybrid photo video business. what would you say is one of the most impactful, besides the 4 Hour Work Week, one of the most impactful books that you've read or listened to in the last few years?
I think I go through phases, or maybe I go through seasons. I feel like I go through this with kind of all aspects of my business, that I go really hard on YouTube for a couple of months, and I'll go really hard on something else, or we'll try to build the show up for Nikon, which comes with a lot of back end and whatnot. I would say that my favorite, it's not really a business book, but I think that the concepts within it inspire, again, kind of going back to that lifestyle design. Mm-hmm. I'm going to say Medium Raw by Anthony Bourdain, which is, I'm sure, not an answer that you've ever received, and you'll probably never receive again.
That's great though.
So Anthony Bourdain obviously traveled, I guess, and did all kinds of shows all around the world. And this is kind of, I think it's 2010, 2011. It's kind of a bit of, what year is it?
Yeah, 2010.
Probably not 1905. Okay, so 2010, he comes out with this book. And I find a lot of the stories in it very inspiring to the fact that your life can really have no limits, except for the limits that you kind of put on yourself. And it's not something that he like outlines, like, here's your 10-step solution to becoming, like, enjoying your life and having financial freedom and whatnot.
Sure.
But it kind of shows you where that upper limit is. It also shows where the lowest limit is too. He still, I guess, he dealt a lot with troubling substance issues.
Yeah, for sure.
And yeah, but it shows where the bottom is, it shows where the top is, and it kind of gives you a new high watermark as far as kind of what you can go out and do if you're somebody that happens to be interested in traveling and getting paid to do it. So I think that book changed my mindset a little bit to what is actually possible. This was also in the time when TV, he was probably the last host on TV that was actually kind of doing something that I found to be that interesting. I'm sure there's other examples, but it seemed like him and his team, like a small team of 4 or 5 people, would just go out. They would try to do what they could in the field, and they'd come back home and they'd fix it and post with voiceover, and they'd put together an amazing thing. They kind of knew what they were shooting out in the field. They got to have fun. They got to hang out. And yeah, so I think that kind of showed me what was potentially possible in a media position without actually being like a step-by-step guide or anything like that. So I found inspiration from that, which is, again, weird answer, but it definitely did open some doors, at least in my mind.
Oh, I love it. And I've got it pulled up on the screen. For those of you listening to the audio, I've got it pulled up here on the live stream. Medium Raw, of course, by Anthony Bourdain, A Bloody Valentine to the World of Food and the People Who Cook. Which, of course, like, even that title is just very much screams Anthony Bourdain, somebody who also thought outside the box. So it's fitting that you would share that book. We'll make sure to link to that in the show notes at bokehpodcast.com. All right, so let's dig into kind of the primary topic at hand, if you will, for the day, and that is hybrid shooting. So photo, video, and I want to start with I'm a big fan of principle driving what it is that we do, because it's easy to just do things and check it off a list, but if we don't understand kind of the thought process behind it, I think we limit ourselves. Talk to me about why it matters to you to shoot video instead of just photo, to add video to that, and maybe why it should even matter to our listeners in the first place.
Yeah, so I would say that at least I'm about an hour outside of Toronto. I would say when I started doing hybrid coverage in 2012, 2013, that not a lot of my couples were having video teams there, that there were some amazing video teams, but they were just so expensive. So a lot of my couples were kind of like, I don't know if we can, like, some of, like, still motion and guys like that were like 10,000 plus a day. And they're like, I don't know, like, if we really have that for the budget, especially with video being seen as kind of an additional, that it was never, right. I feel like it's becoming more of like we should have that. Yep. Whereas at the time it was very much like hey, we found bonus money, or hey, my mom's going to pitch this money towards our wedding. What should we spend it on? So at that time, I wasn't seeing a whole lot of video teams. And if I was, they would be doing amazing work, but they would very much, it was a production that they would bring equipment in. There'd be somebody doing like a same day edit. There'd be quote unquote a director. There'd be 3 or 4 camera ops. It was a thing. A lot of my couples, maybe the second reason why they didn't want a video team is because they knew that it came with a little bit of that additional baggage of people just kind of being all up in their space and taking pieces of their wedding day. So I was kind of like, well, it would be nice to just start doing like little maybe minute highlight films, not tell my couples, and just be like, hey, here you go, as a surprise, just in case it didn't work out, because it was very difficult to achieve at that time. Technically, it's easier now.
What camera were you shooting with at the time?
It would have been around that time. I'm going to guess a D800 maybe.
Okay, yeah.
Might have even moved D600. I don't know my Nikon timeline. I should, because I've referenced it a lot, but I think I shot like a D700 for a while, and then I got into one of the video bodies. It wasn't the D90, that was their first video body. It was something else.
Okay.
And I just love the look that you can get from that full frame camera with like really shallow depth of field. It just looked very Hollywood. Again, kind of took it as a creative challenge for myself to be like, okay, I'm doing photography and now I'm going to do video too. Let's see how this works out. And the first one, probably not good. Second one, a little bit better.
Yeah.
Third one, like, oh, that's actually valuable. Like that's a thing that people I could sell now based on that. What I started to realize very quickly was that the why for me was to kind of push myself and maybe to tell stories in a slightly different way. What I realized from my couple's perspective was that they always love the photos, but I wouldn't really ever see them like completely crying their eyes out looking through the photos. There might be a single tear or two every now and then. But there was no reaction to them actually experiencing the full day in an immersive way. And when I showed a few people the surprise video that I made for them, they just lost their minds. So I realized just how valuable that it is, that if it can transport somebody right back into the day like that the photography, like, important as well. But that was kind of my turning moment, that I was like, oh man, there's way more value in this. So I was kind of even like brainstorming ways, like, how do I sell myself as this like all-in-one solution, that I'm just a photographer. I'll do the family photos and I'll do a few documentary images. I'll give you like 150 photos from the wedding day, but then I'm going to make you this wicked awesome video. And I'm like, how do I position that? How do I sell that in a market that, as it turns out, doesn't really want that's not a known. It's very difficult to find someone to book a package like that. So I knew that it was important. So I'm like, whatever, I'll just start doing both. I'll keep it as a surprise for the first year. I'll build a bit of a highlight reel, and then next year I'll start selling it as just kind of a part of what I do. And then I kind of realized that no one else was doing it. And if they were doing it, they were doing photo and video under like one banner, one name. They were usually outsourcing it, or they had somebody else that was coming in to do it. So the style would always change a little bit, or I guess like my anxiety energy, that I don't really want to hire somebody to come in to do something that's 50% of what I've been hired there to do. Like that seems like way too much liability for me to put on someone else. So I was kind of like, I'm just going to see how far I can push this, what I can do. I found that you can, if you wanted to do that full 15-minute cut of the entire wedding day, you can go out and do that, but it takes a lot of post-production, which again, like I wasn't really that into. So I realized that like, hey, I can build a highlight film if I just set it to music and make it a music video, and maybe add a little bit of audio from the vows that are pretty easy to capture. You bring an H4n, you plug it in. And coming back with that, I'm like, okay, this is like my happy place, that I can go out, I can do this, I can feel productive all wedding day. I feel so not productive now when I'm just doing photography only, or if I'm only hired to do video. Like I feel like just standing around for the entire wedding day. And
it'd be like me doing just an audio podcast now. It's like the 68 additional moving parts are missing. This is boring.
Like, oh, yeah. So that's like kind of exactly how I felt when I went back to just doing photography only weddings all of a sudden. And so I just kind of made that a thing. I made the top package on my pricing into basically the full, like if you want me there to capture speeches and ceremony and audio and give you a longer cut. I never delivered anything over about like 10 minutes after I did it the first time, because photography editing takes some time. Video editing, when you're doing a full feature like that, I can't even begin to explain how long that takes you and how frustrating the process can be. So I was kind of like, I'm going to make these 5-minute highlight videos, 5-minute max, usually somewhere around 3 minutes and 30 seconds. I bring all the footage in, and now I would say that I'll shoot probably about 30 minutes total of footage throughout the entire wedding day, because I know the clips that I'm going to use. I slow that down on a timeline into slow motion, and then all of a sudden I just kind of cut from there, and I just kind of take down to essentially it's kind of what the blog post would have been. I've kind of stopped blogging because I do many other things, and that's one of the things that kind of doesn't get done a whole lot anymore. And by just kind of like cutting the highlight film to be what I would usually have considered to be the blog post moments, all of a sudden here's now this thing that they can send all their friends, and people can get completely immersed in it, which I think is kind of, again, the why for doing video, that it just unlocks the story on a completely different day, or in a completely different way. And as far as referrals went, I would say that I don't know if I have metrics on it. I try to keep metrics on most things, but I'm going to say my referrals went up 2 to 5 times what they were. That like everyone was like, you need to get this guy because he can do both. And for quite honestly, less money than it would be to hire an entire other video team to come in.
Sure.
And I wasn't achieving like full steady cam with like the crane jib out on the dance floor, but I could get pretty close to most people. And that was good enough. And the fact that it was just myself and sometimes a second photographer coming in to do it, like people were pretty stoked to have such a small team deliver so much. So yeah, that's kind of the story of it, I guess, and why I found it valuable. And it's a surprisingly valuable piece that you can give to your couples. And also you get to charge more money for a wedding too. So that's nice.
Bonus. Well, but when you talk about the how much more emotionally compelling it is, the inclusion of course, not only the moving capture of that day, but also the addition of music. I will cry like a baby with the right music, and for that matter, watching somebody else's wedding video. Like it doesn't matter. I don't even have to know these people. I'm a pretty emotional guy, and when I hear that the right music combined with what is beautiful capture, oh my word, it totally kills me. So I 100% get what it is that you're talking about, and we're going to dig into kind of the technical side of your process here in just a little bit. But if a photographer is like, you know what, this is something I've been considering, or even just Taylor, what you just said is super compelling right now, maybe I should give this a shot. What would you say are a few questions that they should ask themselves as a sort of filter, if you will, before they take that leap?
I would say number one, that you have to be able to shoot a confident wedding day, that you have to know that you can create amazing wedding photography in any situation, any circumstance. And then at that point, I find that it's kind of nice to layer in doing some video coverage and just to start out small, like Instagram Reels. You can just maybe don't shoot it vertical, shoot it like 4K 60 and just cut a vertical out of it.
Okay.
But start small and start with those tiny little deliverables, maybe go up to a minute for like an Instagram post or something like that. And then after a couple of weddings, you'll probably be to a point that you know kind of what you want if you were to make this a little bit longer. I would say the other thing is, or maybe the hardest part, maybe this is out of context of what you asked, but the hardest part is actually literally remembering to shoot video for the first bunch of weddings. That before I did hybrid, I probably had been to 300 weddings.
Yeah.
And as a photographer and being like, oh crap, I need to shoot like a video clip of this. Like you literally do forget. So maybe put like a sticky note on your camera or something.
In addition to that extra camera that you have on top, then you got sticky notes on the side just as a reminder.
Yeah. Doing a photo video and a behind the scenes video about how to do it's getting really meta.
Oh, that's funny.
But yeah, and then I think like adding it in as a challenge, like it was a point in my career that I felt like I kind of was plateaued, where I felt like I was just kind of stuck there and that nothing I could do would really help me shoot a better wedding than last week. And that was one way that I kind of pushed myself as well. So if you're looking for maybe that push, it will definitely help you tell stories in a better and more different way. And it'll make you be completely immersed in the day rather than being like 75% kind of in the day. Like you're just kind of in the day for the entire day now. Which is kind of cool. As far as marketing goes, also, like obviously it's an amazing thing that you can add to your pricing sheet, that like, hey, here's a sample 3.5 minute video we did while also doing photography coverage. And also it doesn't cost nearly as much as bringing in a full other team. And also if you don't want 6 other photography video people there, like it's fine. There's only 2 of us. I feel like that's a super compelling marketing thing for at least my couples. I'm kind of quiet, shy, introverted, and I feel like all of my couples are as well. So the less cameras that are pointed at them on the day, the happier they're going to be, and the more they're actually going to be themselves. So I would say that marketing wise, it's great. It creates a product that people are going to be super stoked with. The hard part is that people just might not know they want that yet. And that's what I found when I tried to market that weird package that maybe shouldn't have existed, or at least the market told me that it should not be a thing.
Okay.
So it's a creative challenge. It's fun, and it creates something super valuable, I think. And also something that, all that footage you can now use to market your own wedding photography business too, that you can now make better behind the scenes videos, with that footage than, if you did not have it, you're just trying to do a slideshow over you talking as well. So yeah,
so
there's a lot of benefits.
You may have seen me looking down. I'm a note taker. I've got a notebook here, but really and I love that you're continuing to come back to the benefits, because it's super compelling. But when I think about the questions, again, for photographers, because of course this business model isn't for everybody, and that's kind of my thought, right? So in order to maybe filter for those who this isn't a good fit, I mean, the first question to ask is, are you at a place as a photographer that you can shoot a strong wedding or event or portrait session, whatever it is that you might also add video to? Can you do that with photo? That's a good baseline place to start. And then based on what you were saying, maybe the second question is, can you multitask? I mean, the idea of incorporating video, with photo when photo is plenty to keep up with it on its own. It certainly was for me as a photographer. The idea of then adding video to that, it's kind of a mind-blowing concept to consider. But that would probably be a good, strong second question too, right? Is that multitasking piece?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And yeah, it's just like getting that muscle memory. And a lot of my couples ask, like, how do you do it? And it's like, you just literally do it. You just start and you make the video.
And adapt. You do adapt. I mean, it's kind of cool actually as human beings to watch others, and certainly to personally have the experience, adapt to situations in some cases very quickly. Like it is what we are good at as humans, and just keep an open mind and work hard at it. And as we put that work in, the ability comes. But well, let me transition to a different question then. From your experience watching other photographers, what would you say are a few mistakes that photographers make kind of beginning to shoot this hybrid model, and maybe the solutions to those potential mistakes?
Yeah. First one, as I mentioned, literally forgetting to shoot video
Okay.
is the one that I see the most often.
All right.
I think selling it before you have proof that that you can do it. So do it as a surprise first. If you're trying to do a paid gig first with it, there's going to be a lot of pressure and a lot of stress, and it's better to do it as a surprise for even the first year that you're kind of running this. And then offering too much too quickly, I think, is another huge concern as well, that you want to be like, oh, we're now the all-in-one solution. We'll do your full ceremony coverage. We'll do speeches with audio and all of these different elements. But what you'll quickly realize is that there is, as you know, there is as much to learn about audio as there is about shooting video.
Oh, yeah.
There's much to learn about video as there is that you've already learned like in your entire career as a photographer.
Mm-hmm.
So audio comes with a lot of challenges, a lot of new ways to do backups that you are completely unfamiliar at this point. So I would say by layering in things as free for first to make sure you can do it, that you can deliver, and then slowly kind of bringing that into your pricing sheet. You can even do it in a way that you put it on your pricing sheet, but you just actively kind of like sell against it. I don't know if this is good business advice, but it's something that I kind of do.
Hey, if it works.
That I sell heavy for those middle two packages for basically my everyday package that comes with a highlight film and then also just the photography only version of it. I sell so hard into those packages, and my top package, if they want it, that comes with all this stuff, they can get it if they want, but I'm not going to do any real nice discounts because quite honestly, it's a lot of anxiety that comes with shooting that much footage. You come home with so many more gigabytes of things and whatnot to organize and to try to back up in the cloud. So I would say that kind of shooting that highlight to music is my happy place, and I will do the other stuff, but I'm not going to make it super easy. Like, it's not something that I'm always selling towards. And that's even myself as like 7 or 8 years kind of into this hybrid model. So yeah, don't offer too much too quickly, or you will get stressed out of your mind and also make mistakes that you can't, like, if you don't capture audio, or when the audio comes on, if it's too loud and it just clips your entire MP3 or WAV or whatever you're recording. Again, it's kind of like clipping the highlights of your photos. You're shooting JPEG. All of a sudden, that data is just gone. Like, you can't bring that back. So yeah, there's a lot to learn. But when structured the right way over time and not rushing into it, I feel like is kind of the key for it.
That's good recommendation. And by the way, in case you're hearing it or anybody else that's watching or listening is hearing it, I called my apartment complex today. I was like, you know what? Taylor Jackson's going to be on the Bokeh podcast today. You guys better not do lawn work. And we've got blowers running outside regardless. So you may occasionally hear me mute myself so that we don't have that in the background. Apologies ahead of time if that happens. They literally come up here near my front door in the apartment complex, probably in just a little bit. So anyway, just a little side note. I want to keep going though, because I think and you set some good premises here and some good food for thought, some points of consideration for our listeners if they want to make this move. But it's I guess that the technical challenge, what it actually looks like. For example, the first thing that comes to mind for me is I'm so focused on shooting photos. Now I'm going to try to incorporate video. What does that workflow look like? Just as an example. So maybe if you can just kind of give our listeners some key technical concepts. You told me before we get started, you've got kind of 5 key concepts that you want to share that our listeners and viewers should keep in mind as they're beginning to kind of delve into this world of hybrid video and photo.
Yeah. So the first one is, like, fortunately, you've kind of already learned most of the key fundamentals as far as lighting goes and what moments to capture, and the flow of a wedding, which I think is like the hardest part to do, especially from the internet, to like figure all that out. You've already probably been to a wedding. You've troubleshooted some situations. You know what good light looks like. So now putting that all into video, you're already miles ahead. Shooting a camera with a fast buffer is also something that you should consider. I shoot specifically Nikon. I shot at D850 for a bunch of years, and I'm now on the Nikon Z6 II, and they have these beautiful, lovely XQD or CF express cards. And they are so fast. So you can take a bunch of raw photos and flip to video mode and be recording as soon as you're in video mode. Whereas some other camera, specifically things like, I guess the A7S or the A7 III, which is what a lot of people in our group, we have a members group for this type of stuff, they basically finding the limit of that buffer, that they're taking a bunch of raw photos and then they have to wait 20 seconds before they're able to actually write a video clip to the same card. So that's a struggle for them. So make sure that your camera is technically capable of it. Most of them are, or you can find workarounds as well. When I was shooting, I had a Nikon D750 as a main, and it was very much the struggle that if I took a lot of raw photos, I wasn't able to quickly switch to video. So I actually inversed my process where I would do the video clip first because it's less taxing and less data. And then I would switch and do photos. So I inversed my entire process just to work with that camera. So that is an option, but if you can have a camera with a fast buffer and a fast card, whatever the fastest card you can put it in, is the way to go about it.
Awesome.
Another thing is, I guess the third point is ND filters, that a lot of, if you're watching a lot of how to make a wedding video online or how to do any sort of cinema, you're probably going to see a lot of things about ND filters and variable ND filters that basically just act as, you're a photographer, that act as sunglasses for the camera, so you can slow your shutter speed down. And if you're shooting kind of double your frame rate, technically you're going to get the most beautiful cinematic image possible. I do not worry about them at all on the wedding day. I have enough variables going. I use a program, it's a plugin for Premiere called Real Smart Motion Blur. And it gets to like 80% what shooting the correct frame rate would look like. It's never going to be 100%, but as far as workflow goes, shooting both photography and video, that's one corner that I think is reasonable to cut. It's too complex to be like screwing on NDs and whatnot and running in between frame rates and everything. So don't worry too much about that. Use a plugin, or if you're shooting in slow motion, so if you're shooting 60 frames a second in your camera and you're slowing it down to 24 for the final delivery, I have noticed that looks pretty good even when you shoot it at a ridiculous frame rate like 1/8000th of a second.
Really?
That it doesn't look too choppy, it doesn't look too like over sharpened, that it looks okay in slow motion. So maybe balance what you're comfortable and what you think looks good, but don't worry about too many accessories. To, I guess, go to the next point that is also kind of based on that, to shoot in slow motion, it feels a heck of a lot more romantic. And you can actually kind of capture those in between moments that they didn't even realize were moments. And it also makes your job in editing a lot easier, that if you're shooting 60 frames a second and you're slowing that down to 24 frames, you're getting, every clip is now going to be like, I don't know what the math is, like every second is now a second or 2.5 seconds. So you can shoot less footage on the day and still deliver the same length of highlight.
Nice.
And it becomes a lot easier on you. So that's kind of one of the things that I found that both makes a better product and also makes your life a little bit easier.
And it just looks pretty too. I mean, I don't know. There's something about a little slow-mo with the right music, again, that's just like, wow.
Like really shallow depth of field. It's just I think it's the way to do it. That when I see a wedding film in regular speed, unless it has a very compelling story, I'm kind of like, this is weird. Like, what's going on? Like, why is this like in real life? I feel like I'm watching the day. And then the last piece is editing, that you're going to shoot way too much video over time, and you slowly kind of dial back and you shoot less and you find only the pieces that you want. Like the first, for instance, like the family formal session, like I used to roll video on that and try to get all kinds of stuff, and I realized I never use it. So now I just do my best to get one good close-up clip of every single person that's like kind of that key family member, rather than trying to just film the entire family session, and it's just weird footage that you will never actually find a home. So you will overshoot, and it'll take too much time, but you will find that efficient process eventually. And then I would say now, if I were to sit down and do an entire highlight film for like a normal kind of 8-hour wedding day, I would say that I could probably build it in about maybe an hour and 20 minutes max. That it's like maybe a little bit over an hour.
Wow.
Just because everything's linear. I'm not jumping around in the storyline. I'm not like jumping to like, here's a speech and then back to the ceremony. It's just full linear. Like, here's the wedding day, start to finish, set to music. And you can do that in about an hour hour and a half probably.
And I think that's a good lesson for photographers, a good reminder for photographers who are just doing photo to begin with that are already shooting too much too, you know, like 3, 4, 5,000 images. And then you got to sort through those and you're delivering 1,500 images to your client. I maybe that's what you do, Taylor. I don't know. My personal take on it is that it really just becomes overkill, that most clients don't have the time to dig through 1,200, 1,500 images. Like 600 to 800 might be where I would max out personally. But it also means more efficiency at the end of the day. Less if you're delegating that culling work. In fact, at Photographers Edit, actually this year we've seen a significant jump in the number of photographers who are submitting the culling work. So they're having us do the culling and the color correction. But whether you're
today,
woohoo, brilliant. But whether you're doing that or not, it's going to either be cheaper because you're not having to pay for as much culling, or it's going to save you time because you're not having to do that yourself. I think that's just a great reminder. Don't shoot too much. And I mean, the idea that you're able to put that together in an hour and a half or so is really, really impressive. We'll have to make sure. Do you have any examples of those highlight clips on the website?
I have examples of it, but all my post-production stuff is locked up behind my course's webpage, unfortunately. I'll do some free stuff for YouTube eventually. There's some full wedding days that I do both photo and video, but it doesn't show the full behind the scenes once I get back to my computer, but it shows in the field how I'm doing it.
Well, and I have to kind of break the fourth wall here for everybody listening in or watching. This was not a setup then so that Taylor could sell his courses. I truly, I want to say this though, because I've been in the industry way too long. I know that usually when you go to a workshop or you go to a conference or maybe there's a podcast, that it's like this kind of automatic setup for a commercial of some kind. And that, honestly, it just grates on me. I'm very cynical about it. So I just want the audience to know that we weren't trying to set that up, but I am personally going to now pop it up on screen, Taylor Jackson Courses. And I'm actually going to also show this here on the browser, the website itself, taylorjacksoncourses.com. There's actually a lot of content on here. And by the way, a lot of it's super reasonably priced as well. So
you can sign up. It's $30 and you get access to all of that.
Wow.
So it's $30 a month, but you get every single one of those courses, which is like a ton. So
a ton of content.
To do it in a month, you'll die.
Okay, so taylorjacksoncourses.com, and we're gonna link to that in the show notes at bokehpodcast.com as well. And I also, part of the reason I wanted to bring that up anyway, before you even said anything about it, Taylor, is that we've kind of barely scratched the surface. Honestly, I mean, we're well over an hour at this point, which is kind of usually my cutoff point, and we could easily spend another hour or 2 hours because honestly, I have so many questions. Like we just kind of scratched the surface. So for those of you listening in, for those of you watching, take advantage not only of the resource, which is Taylor's YouTube channel, and I'll also pop that up here on the screen really quickly again as well, youtube.com/TaylorJacksonPhoto. Follow Taylor, subscribe, and look at that content. But then also get to that content at taylorjacksoncourses.com. I mean, $30 a month for the amount of content that you're going to get and the quality of education. Just take a peek at his YouTube channel. You'll know what I'm talking about when I say quality is incredible. And that's a really, really great deal. And Andre says 1 hour is great. I did a highlight video last month and it took 5 hours, and that's probably even really good, Andre. So like, I think I can imagine that most videographers are spending even more time than that to put something together. So, but I'm sure you can get a little bit more insight into what Taylor is doing for that process. If you take a look at his content. Taylor, this has been super fun, man. And I hope, honestly, because there really is so much to talk about. I hope that we get to do another podcast interview at some point. But just remind our listeners where, in the meantime, they can follow you. I know we've been shouting out the different websites and so forth. Sum it all up for us, if you will.
I would say just come on over to YouTube, Taylor Jackson Photo. There's a lot of content on there. And yeah, I would say start there. If you want to follow on Instagram, feel free. Come on over to TikTok. I make weird stuff there. Be prepared to be weirded out a bit, probably.
But is that Taylor Jackson on TikTok as well?
I'm Taylor Jackson Photo on TikTok, but type my name in, I'll pop up. I got a camera in my face always.
Perfect. Seriously, this has been really fun. I really appreciate you making time for all of us. For everybody listening in, again, for those of you that are listening to the audio after the fact, make sure you go back, watch the replay, and for future episodes, make sure you're following us on Instagram, Bokeh Podcast. You'll see when the upcoming live streams are about to happen. You can come join us, hang out, ask questions, send us funny emojis, whatever you might want to do. Come hang out with us. Thanks again, everybody. Thanks again, Taylor. Everyone have a wonderful day.